On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn climbed the scaffold at the Tower of London. She had been Queen of England for just 3 years. The man who ordered her execution was her own husband, Henry VIII. The same king who broke with the Catholic Church, founded a new religion, and triggered one of Europe's greatest political crises just to marry her. Now he sent her to her death on a fabricated charge of treason. England, early 16th century. Europe was ablaze with the religious fires of Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation in 1517. Henry VIII was just 17 when he ascended the throne in 1509, following his father Henry VII's death. He was a cultured, athletic young man admired across Europe, fluent in Latin, skilled at the lute, called the perfect prince. No one could have imagined what he would become. Henry was never meant to be king. His elder brother Arthur died in 1502 at just 15, leaving behind his widow Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the Spanish monarchs. For political and financial reasons, young Henry was pressured to betroth his sister-in-law. When he ascended the throne in 1509, he married Catherine, then 23, fulfilling the diplomatic agreement. That marriage would last 24 years and ignite everything that followed. In his early years, Henry was a relatively popular king. But his obsession grew, he needed a male heir. Catherine endured at least 6 pregnancies, most resulting in stillbirths or infants who died within days. In 1516, Mary was born, the only child to survive. For Henry, a daughter was not enough. Without a son, the Tudor throne was threatened. This obsession would consume the next 2 decades of his reign. Around 1526, Henry became infatuated with Anne Boleyn, a 25-year-old lady at court. Unlike his previous mistresses, Anne refused to be merely a concubine. She demanded marriage. Henry petitioned Pope Clement VII to annul his marriage to Catherine, arguing it had never been valid. The Pope, pressured by Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, refused. Henry would not accept no for an answer. Who was Henry VIII really? Historical records reveal a man of extreme contradictions. Intelligent and learned, he composed music still performed today. But he was also paranoid, cruel, and capable of sacrificing anyone for political convenience. Physically imposing, 6 feet 2 inches tall and athletic in his youth, he became obese and sickly in old age. His moods shifted like the wind. Everyone around him lived in constant terror. Cardinal Thomas Wolsey was the most powerful man in England after the king. When he failed to secure the annulment from Catherine, Henry destroyed him in 1529. Wolsey died before he could be executed. His replacement was Thomas Cromwell, a man of humble origins and ferocious intelligence who helped Henry break with Rome and dissolve the monasteries. Even he would be beheaded in 1540, after arranging the disastrous marriage to Anne of Cleves. In 1533, Henry made the decision that would change history. He secretly married Anne Boleyn, already pregnant, without papal approval. He appointed Thomas Cranmer Archbishop of Canterbury, who declared the marriage to Catherine void. The Pope immediately excommunicated Henry. In response, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy in 1534, declaring Henry supreme head of the Church of England. Anglicanism was born, at the whim of a king. Anne Boleyn gave Henry only one child, Elizabeth, in 1533. Miscarriages and stillbirths followed. In January 1536, Catherine of Aragon died. That same month, Anne miscarried a male fetus. Henry, already courting Jane Seymour, acted with brutal speed. In May 1536, Anne was imprisoned in the Tower of London, accused of adultery with 5 men, including her own brother. The charges were fabricated. On May 19, she was beheaded. 11 days after Anne Boleyn's execution, Henry married Jane Seymour. Europe was shocked by the brutal speed of it all. Emperor Charles V wrote that Henry's behavior was disgraceful. Internally, England was divided. In October 1536, a massive rebellion called the Pilgrimage of Grace assembled 40,000 people in the north of the country, protesting the closure of monasteries and the crown's religious reforms. Jane Seymour finally gave Henry what he had always wanted. In October 1537, Edward was born, the future Edward VI. But Jane died 12 days after childbirth. Henry was genuinely devastated. She was the only wife buried beside him at Windsor. 2 more marriages followed, Anne of Cleves, annulled after 6 months, and Catherine Howard, executed in 1542 for alleged adultery at just 19 years old. The death toll ordered by Henry is staggering. Historical estimates suggest he ordered the execution of between 57,000 and 72,000 people throughout his reign, including nobles, clergy, peasants, and 2 of his own wives. Thomas More, his former chancellor and friend, was beheaded in 1535 for refusing to swear loyalty to the king as head of the church. Cromwell, the architect of his power, was beheaded in 1540. Trials in Henry's court were a farce. Anne Boleyn was judged by a tribunal presided over by her own father, Thomas Boleyn, who condemned her to death to save his own head. The 5 men accused of adultery with her were executed the day before she was. Modern historians are unanimous. The charges against Anne were fabricated by Cromwell at the king's command. Justice was merely a tool of power. In Henry's England, criticizing the king was literally a death sentence. The Treason Act of 1534 made it a capital crime to utter any words that could be interpreted as criticism of the monarch. Foreign ambassadors sent secret dispatches describing the terror that reigned in the English court. The Venetian diplomat reported that English nobles lived in constant dread, never knowing who would next lose their head. Henry VIII died on January 28, 1547, aged 55. He weighed over 390 pounds and could barely walk due to chronic leg wounds. Ironically, his son Edward VI, the desperately desired male heir, died at 15. His daughter Mary I persecuted Protestants. His daughter by Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth I, became one of England's greatest monarchs, reigning for 44 years, the daughter of the woman he had beheaded. Henry VIII's legacy is incalculable. The Church of England he created for political convenience still exists, with over 85 million followers worldwide. The British monarchy was transformed forever. The king became supreme head of both state and church. The dissolution of the monasteries redistributed vast wealth and lands, creating a new class of Protestant nobles that permanently shaped modern England. Henry VIII's story is a timeless study in how absolute power corrupts absolutely. A man who began with elevated ideals was consumed by paranoia, ego, and an obsession with control. We see this pattern repeated throughout history: leaders who concentrate too much power, silence every dissenting voice, and convince themselves the rules do not apply to them. The price is always paid by others, rarely by the leader himself. Henry VIII was a king who rewrote the rules of power, faith, and marriage according to his own desires. He executed allies, wives, and saints. He founded a religion on a whim and destroyed centuries of tradition. Was he a monster? Was he a product of his time? Probably both at once. What is certain is that the world he left behind was never the same again. If you enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories.